Okay, I'm going to start. I call this meeting of the West Hollywood Rent Stabilization Commission to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3, our roll call. Secretary Barino, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner O'Keefe. Commissioner Kerpes. Here. Commissioner Maggio. Commissioner Martz.
Here.
Commissioner Topchian.
Here.
Vice Chair Bergstein.
Here.
Chair Charity.
Here. Thanks very much. Moving on from item 3 to item 4, approval of tonight's agenda. Commissioners, having looked at tonight's agenda, do you have any amendments or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on from item 4 to item 5, approval of the minutes of our last meeting, May 23rd, 2019. Commissioners, having reviewed those minutes, do you have any amendments or a motion to approve?
I had one amendment that I already let our secretary know on page 4 of our packet, under Appeal D-4399. The last line just says the motion was seconded by Martz, and I just asked her to add the word commission in front of his name.
Commissioner Martz will be amended.
And I already mentioned this to the secretary as well, but under present, it has me listed as present, which is incorrect, but it does correctly have me listed as absent.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll make that amendment as well. Any further amendments? Very well. Do we have a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I'm abstaining.
Thank you very much. Moving on from item 5, approval of minutes, to item 6, public comment. I don't believe we have any public comment. Moving on from item 6 to item 7, our director manager's report. I'll check in with staff. Ms. Regan or Secretary Brino, do we have a director's manager report? Oh, from Peter right now. Okay. We'll pause for a moment. Peter, we're pausing for you. We're on director's manager report.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. Members of the Commission, I apologize for being a little late.
No problem at all.
Reviewing the calendar, upcoming, we do have 2 appeals. On the 27th, we'll also be announcing the annual general adjustment and the new relocation fees that evening. On July 11th, we also have 2 appeals. That is the evening when the chair and the vice chair reorganized. And we do have a presentation from the planning staff on the light rail extension. July 25th, we still have noted as the study session. I believe at the last meeting, the commission had some discussion of moving that study session into August. But as of today, we still do have that on the July 25th date. And August 8th, we do have 2 appeals scheduled. August 22nd, we had a request for an item from planning. This is related to the RSO's minimum maintenance standards for paint, and this would be to establish an alternative standard for historically designated properties that are subject to the RSO. This concludes my report.
Thanks very much. Commissioners, any comments or questions?
Just a quick one. Just in preparation for the study session, have you or staff been keeping kind of a running list of issues that have come up throughout the year that we have mentioned in passing? That's a good topic for study session. I've kept notes of a couple, but not a comprehensive list.
We don't have a comprehensive list, but we have a list of items. So perhaps if we all bring our lists, we'll have that comprehensive list together.
Okay, thank you.
And just to inform the commission, I do have apologies. My work is pulling me away on July 11th to work on a case in Arizona. It may settle, but if in the event it doesn't, I will miss that meeting. And I'll keep my absences to a minimum, so I do apologize about that one. Commissioners, any further comments or questions? Very good. We'll move on from item 7 to item 8, commission comments. No commission comments? Oh, yes. Commissioner Bergstein.
Just one, Mr. Noonan did notify me that the discussion at City Council for the possibility of smoke-free housing is back on the City Council agenda for this Monday. Council meeting starts at 6:30. I think it's item 5B. It's a fairly ambitious agenda that they have that night, so I don't know what time that particular item will be heard, but it would encourage anyone on the commission or in the public, both tenants and landlords, who have an interest in hearing about a potential for smoke-free housing in our rent-stabilized units to either come to the meeting and sign a speaker slip on Monday, or if you were unable to attend, you can always email City Council, and their general address is the letter C and then council@weho.org. That's ccouncil@weho.org, and those comments will get to all of the council members. Secondly, it's not really a rent stabilization, but it's a rental issue that just kind of to publicize that one of the social service that the city of West Hollywood offers is for people who are in fairly dire straits about paying their rent for a month. There is a program administered through the National Council for Jewish Women that can provide, I believe it's a one-time grant to help you with your rent. I make donations to the National Council, and I was able to designate my donation for that specific fund. So there is both funding from City of West Hollywood Social Services, as well as the public is welcome to donate for that cause as well. But for those who are really in desperate straits, that might buy them a month. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Very well. We'll move on from item 8 to item 9, our appeal. Our appeal tonight, item 9A, D-4287, at the address 969 Larrabee Street, Unit 1. At this time, the appeal was filed by Susie Montgomery. The tenant is Sultan Al-Fawaz. We don't have any of those parties present, so at this time we'll hear the staff report from our counsel, Ms. Regan.
Thank you. On March 20th, 2018, the hearing examiner awarded the tenants at 969 Larrabee Street a rent decrease of $28 until the landlord painted the building exterior. After the landlord submitted an earlier request to have the rent restored, the tenants objected on the grounds that the doors had not been painted, door edges had not been painted, and some of the window frames had not been completely painted. Based on these objections, the hearing examiner denied the request to restore the rent. On January 22nd of this year, the landlord submitted a second request for a compliance determination for the rent to be restored on the paint issue. The same tenants objected again and claimed that nothing had changed since the first request. The city inspector went out to examine the paint, and in particular the window trim, doors, and door edges, and determined that these areas had been painted, though she did note some minor defects. Based on those defects, the hearing examiner denied the request to restore the rent. It is this denial that is the subject of the appeal. Staff recommends that the commission reverse the hearing examiner's decision and restore the rent on the exterior paint. The areas in question are minor and de minimis relative to the building exterior as a whole.
Thank you very much. And I'll ask if that's one of our parties. Commissioners, at this time, we'll pause for a moment. Just gonna wait. Okay.
You can still come in.
Come on in.
Yeah.
Thanks. Commissioners, at this time, do you have any questions or comment for our legal counsel? No? Oh, Commissioner Kirby's? Mm-hmm. Great.
I'm gonna get my microphone on. So I understand the staff is asking us to reverse the hearing examiner's decision, not necessarily that they're on the basis that she misinterpreted the evidence, or I guess I'm trying to understand. We're oftentimes not advised to kind of rehear it or retry it, or make decisions. And we're talking about the preponderance of the evidence in this case. No.
So the recommendation is that there's no substantial evidence supporting the decision not to restore the rent It's a lot of negatives. I hope that was okay.
Commissioners, any further question or comment? Very good. We'll move right into deliberation. If anybody would like to start.
All right. To me, it's pretty clear that this work is incomplete and has not been done correctly. And so therefore, I agree with the staff report in its entirety.
I'm I'm hesitant, not completely opposed, but I'm hesitant to agree with the staff report to overturn the hearing examiner's decision for two reasons. One, I worry about existing tenants that now will have their rent restored. In the future, let's say we're basically saying that our rules are supposed to be that you're supposed to restore the service or restore the service to what it was before, even though it's minor. These are just minor flaws. If this were to happen again in the next painting, and if we just chip away each time, even in just little bits of what the service is, that concerns me. The other thing that I feel that we oftentimes, when it comes to this, these are completely separate cases, but when it comes to when we've got several different owners over a period of time, but the same tenant that lasts, and maybe there wasn't a rent registration filed or something like that, so that the current owner has to repay all the rent overpayments for all the adjustments that were illegal over the years. Part of the basis for that reasoning is that the property owner is in a better situation to recoup that money from their previous owner than the tenants are at recouping that overpayment from previous owners. And I feel in this case, the property owner is in a much better position to recoup the unsatisfactory, not up to par painting services than the tenant. I mean, I don't think the tenant would have a claim here, but even if they did, the logic would be that the property owner is in a better situation to make the painters do it properly than what the tenant is. And so I'm hesitant about restoring the $28 to each of the units for that full amount. I don't even know if we have the option of reducing the amount to restore to tenants. It doesn't sound like we do. So that's my hesitancy in going along with this. I do believe that they did paint the outside. I mean, there's no question there that they've done that. They've hired painters, but I just don't know if I like the fact that we're restoring it when it wasn't adequate.
You think the photograph exhibits that we have in front of us are minor? The cracks and the chipping is minor?
That's according to the hearing examiner.
But-
Or, I'm sorry, that's according to, the hearing actually the inspector, that they were small discrepancies, or small,
Okay.
maybe I'm confused at your previous statement.
If these photographs show me that I don't think some of these complaints are minor.
So you think that they,
Right. So you think we shouldn't overturn the decision? You think we should let the decision stand and keep the rent decrease in place?
Absolutely.
Right, got it.
And what you have been discussing is also hypothetical. This is what's happening. What could happen in the future hasn't happened.
In this case, a substantial compliance, substantial, the word itself. Because I know in other cases, staff report usually makes reference to what substitutes substantial.
So what's interesting in the, both the ordinance and the regulations, it doesn't use the word substantial compliance, it uses the word compliance. So I think that's what the commissioner is deciding, is whether or not there has been compliance with the hearing examiner's order. And I think to make that decision, you have to look at the totality of the situation and decide, as Commissioner Kirby's has articulated, whether or not what has not been done renders the entire order, renders the landlord out of compliance with the entire order.
Okay, so it wouldn't be the invoice for, here it is, over $10,000. That wouldn't be a substantial spending, wouldn't constitute substantial compliance, right? It's not the...
So that's evidence that you could look at to see if there has been compliance, because that was submitted by the landlord. That's in the record.
Thank you. The other question, the photographs, the images clearly showing some of the areas that on the exterior door and the window, I guess, trims, that the areas that the old paint is exposed. There's no question that there is a new paint, but I wonder how is the old paint can be exposed unless maybe there was some work done after the painting, some kind of repair work. Did you know if you recall anything like that discussed? Because I couldn't find it.
It was not in
Probably
the
not.
record, right?
Okay, thank you. So I'm a little bit I'm a little bit confused with the recommendation, the staff's recommendation, because my problem is the inspector's observation. What I would consider substantial compliance or compliance when each of these questions would have, the response would have been affirmative yes versus yes, but there are some areas with minor possible issues, and listing of 12 units or 9 units or 13 units where there are some issues. That could be minor, but it means to me that the work was not completed in a quality way. In a quality-wise, I think it's a sloppy job, and otherwise, how can you paint the door and have the areas left with the old paint exposed? So that's kind of I don't understand. And to me is, you know, the landlord's responsibility, because the examiner gave a specific order, and you can paint the door, but it's not about how much space of the door was painted and how much is left. So if you painted 9% of the door, that would be substantial compliance. I don't see it that way. So clearly there was a very sloppy job, and I don't want this kind of be a message to this landlord property owner, or maybe for in future cases when the property owners, management companies are ordered to comply, they should know that they, they need to inspect if the work was completed before they file the compliance determination request with the city, because in our city we have a very high maintenance standards. Rents are really high. Some people pay a lot of money every month. So regardless, I don't even know how much rent they pay here. It doesn't matter. But what I mean is we have a very high maintenance standards in West Hollywood. So if you are ordered by the examiner to perform certain work, that needs to be done in a high quality and almost a perfect way in order to get a rent reduction restored. That's kind of my opinion, unless if the fellow commissioners have, I would like to hear your kind of opinion and position.
Commissioner Martz?
Yes. I have a question for Ms. Regan. As Commissioner Kirby has asked, are we able to do a partial restoration?
No, unfortunately, the regulations say it's all or nothing.
Oh, wow.
That's tough because on the one hand, we have a landlord who has twice had a painter go out and spend a considerable amount of money to try to address what they've been told to do by the city. On the other hand, the work, like several people have said, is relatively sloppy, and there are concerns that it has not been done to the levels that we expect and match our regulations. It would have been nice if the parties showed up so we could ask them questions. So, you know, when you don't show up, you are at the mercy of the group up here where we can't ask you questions, and we have to go with what the record is. And my thinking is this just is not quite up to standards. There is the regulation that says there needs to be compliance, and so we can go into a long debate about partial compliance, substantial compliance, reasonable compliance, all of these different words, but those aren't in our regulation. And if we're going by the plain letter of the law, have they demonstrated compliance to paint this property? And they're almost there, but I just don't think they are. And you know, if we want to feel bad for the landlord, we can, but they also have remedies against the painter for not doing a good job. You know, that's something they can work on. So as much as I feel bad that they've made some attempts, I think that we should stick with the rent reduction as is until we see better proof or they prove it to the hearing examiner one more time.
Thank you. Commissioner Bergstein?
I would be voting in favor of staff's recommendation. If we look in our packet at pages 29 and 30, it was the inspection done by I'm not sure which city employee went out, but it says, you know, does the exterior of the building appear to have been painted recently? Yes, the exterior of the building appears to have been painted recently. Has the exterior window trim been freshly painted? Yes, the exterior window trim appears to have been freshly painted. Same thing about the doors and the exterior doors. Do I think that the painter did kind of a sloppy job? Yes. You know, it's a little goopy. I do understand one of the issues when you paint a doorway into a unit, the trim around the molding for the door, you literally have to leave the door open for almost 2 full days to let it dry. Because when you close it, if the paint is still wet, it just comes back up. I know that's tricky to get that last inch around the top and 2 sides painted. So I think that the property owner is in compliance. Was the work a little sloppy? Yes. But this reminds me of I had a neighbor's very long-time tenants. They were the second tenants in the building, built in 1963, and there were some issues, and our code compliance officer, Jeff Jones, worked with them and the owner, and you know, the owner brought the unit into compliance, but was it attractive? No. And Jeff said, they're in compliance with the code, they're in compliance with a housing service, doesn't mean it has to be, you know, that beautiful. So in this case, you know, I think that the owner is in compliance. Sloppy work, not work that perhaps I would use on my property, but I think that she has shown that they have painted the exterior of the building, and I would be voting to restore the reduction in rent.
I was thinking more along the lines of Commissioner Martz, where I was thinking more of a lesser rent reduction, something like they got 75% of the way there, and you know, maybe we should still keep intact a $7 rent decrease. However, being the Rent Stabilization Commission, I do really have a lot of favor for tenants' rights in this city, and it does kind of perturb me that we have a situation where the job was done sloppy. I struggle with the hearing examiner's decision where they said, you know, in some instances, all the exterior window trim had not been consistently or evenly, you know, painted, but that wasn't the case. It was only a few things. So I struggled with, you know, maybe some of the reasoning where the evidence, you know, possibly doesn't show that the examiner's decision, you know, was consistent with, you know, what we see in the pictures. However, in the pictures, I do see, you know, what we term, or what the, you know, report terms minor deficiencies, but minor is subjective to the people that live there. And if you do have places in a door where you see the prior underlining paint chipping, you know, through the new paint, then is it a fresh paint job? I don't think so. And if we're looking at the word compliance, and that's all we have to go on, compliance means you did it all the way. And I think that the evidence shows that it didn't go all the way here. So I think I'm in agreement with my majority of the commissioners where I'm more in favor of not going with the recommendation, but keeping the decision in place until, and I was persuaded by your argument, Commissioner Martz, that there are other remedies against the painters for doing a poor job. And they could take our decision back to those painters and say, you got to fix this, and then have another compliance determination.
So I'm sorry to introduce a wrench in these, but I've been looking back at the regulations, and even though on the appeal portion, it doesn't say, I did notice that the hearing examiner, so first it says, the landlord may file a written request that the MAR be restored to its prior level or such level as is warranted by the maintenance performed or the services restored. And that also gives the hearing examiner the option to issue a decision granting, partially granting, or denying restoration of the MAR. So even though the appeal doesn't necessarily mention that, it seems to me that that's implied by what the hearing examiner can do. So having read that, I don't think it would be beyond the bounds of the regulations if the commission wanted to partially restore some of the rent. That's up to you.
Could we
Mr.
remand
Chair-
it back to her?
Yes.
Giving
if you-
direction that we want it, her to come to some sort of conclusion that's less than 28, but
Yes, that's an option for the commission as well, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add that I think, a good paint job is preparation, prepping. And it looks like there has not been any sanding here or filling in of these gaps. And that's all part of a good paint job.
Chair.
And the sanding as well, which.
Commissioner Topchin.
Yeah, I just wanted to, first I wanted to correct my previous statement. I mentioned like 12 or 13 units, but that's not what I meant. I'm referring to the number of photographic images per the section on that inspector's report. That's the numbers, the reference, they're not the unit numbers, but they are the image numbers that identify the images. So now, I'm in favor of remanding if commissioners will support that, of course. Because clearly there is a lot of money spent and the work was done. But the other way, maybe we can determine if those pictures, the pictures that are, the numbers are here, they pertain to unit numbers, specific unit numbers, maybe those units that are referenced in this inspection report that shows minor defects, maybe those units should not be the rent restored for them, and we can restore for all others, or the inspector identified every unit that filed a complaint with minor defects.
So so the rent reduction has to apply across the board.
Across the board?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, if that's the case, so then I would say, because I was thinking maybe we can just, remove those units, separate them from the others. But I think the remanding to this examiner, back to the examiner to review that, I'm in favor of it.
But if we remand it, you're going to find the same mistakes. The same mistakes are going to be there. So why remand it? It needs to be done right. It has not been done correctly. The repairs have not been done. The sanding has not been done. This was done very cheaply.
Right, but the examiner could look into maybe reduce the amount of the rent reduction based on those defects. Maybe the
I
rent
think that
reduction-
we have enough evidence here to not remand it. I think that it's gone to this hearing examiner several times, and now it's on our plate, and I think we have enough in front of us to make a decision, and I would be in favor of doing a partial rent reduction, reducing the 28 to a number to show that this landlord has made the attempts to do this, but has just failed to do it to completion. So either cutting it in half or doing a $10 rent reduction, or, the number to me isn't necessarily as important, but somewhere in the middle to show that the tenants are still deserving under the law of a rent reduction, but the landlord is also deserving of of a removal of part of that rent reduction based on the amount of money, time, and effort that has gone into the painting that we've told them they should be doing.
Well, maybe the owner then would feel, well, then that enough has been done, there's no reason to go any further, and I'll take the smaller reduction.
That's
And
their-
then
I mean,
the work
that's-
isn't done.
That's an opportunity that all landlords have. They never have to do the work we tell them to. They can always sit with the 60, 80, but
Commissioner Kirby?
I have just a question. Do we have a copy of the guidelines for the rent that the hearing examiner follows for these sorts of things? I'd just like to see that before the commission ever starts to adjust numbers, and so we have a basis to kind of compare things
Commissioner, I
to.
didn't quite hear the beginning of your.
I'm asking if there's a copy of the regulations for her guidelines. I don't remember what they're called.
We had them.
Yeah, this range, the scale for exterior painting.
I think it's in our regulations on page 48, if I'm not
Oh, I have
mistaken.
the regulations though.
Yeah, they're there.
Is it?
Yes. They're right here, look. Here.
Yeah, it's different than 48.
Or maybe I'm wrong.
I saw them earlier, yeah, there's a slight difference. Yeah, it stays, yeah.
so it looks like paint exterior 29 is the max.
What's the range? I don't have it in front of me.
What's
Do
that?
you have the range in front of you?
It's
It's-
just one.
It's just 29, which is,
Just one number, 29 being the maximum.
that's the high, there's no low.
I would be comfortable with reducing the amount of the reduction if we look at it, if it's been reduced $28 currently, and I would argue that, 90 to 95% of the work has been done. So I don't, so if we reduced it to 10%, it'd be, a $2.80 reduction. I don't know how my fellow commissioners would feel about maybe just reducing it to a $5 across the board, and see if that would still be enough to incentivize the owner to finish the work or to live with it. But it seems to me, the vast majority of the work is done, just sloppy.
I would personally be in favor of something a little bit higher. I think across the board, the work has been done poorly, and I don't know if that complies with our request and law of compliance. And then, if we determine that all of these paint jobs are sloppy and not meeting compliance, and then 2, 3 of these units are a little bit worse than that, this is not a science, this is an art, unfortunately. So, like I said, the number to me is not necessarily that important, but I don't think $2.80 or $5 really sends the impact or matches the evidence that we've been given here. So I would be in the favor of anywhere 7 to 15 would be where I'm comfortable going.
And I'm less concerned about the exact number as well. I just like to, when the commission makes these sorts of decisions, that we are doing it with some sort of basis and reasoning and logic that can carry over to future decisions we might make. So for whatever reason we come up with and for whatever dollar amount, it's a reason and dollar amount that we could apply to a similar situation should that ever occur. That's the only reason I asked for this in front of us. So paint is a little bit more difficult than other things because in the past we have compared, let's say, a microwave with a hot oven or something, or a fence with a children's gate or something. And other things compare more easily than paint. I'm not seeing a whole lot of things on this list to give us direction that compare. That's my reasoning for hoping that we think about this and come up with a reason for why we choose the number we choose.
I'm not going for any change in the number. It should stay. Yeah, that should be the incentive to get the work done right.
You'd have my vote for keeping a smaller rent reduction in place.
It's going to be difficult for us to justify the amount. If we're not going to reverse or amend, I would vote for keeping the rent reduction. unless there's a consensus on the amount, which I don't know, I wouldn't go less than $10, $15.
Okay.
I wouldn't go less than that, but I'd rather keep the reduction or reverse or amend.
So it looks like 4 of us on the dais have a consensus for around 10 to 15. I'm there too. I think Commissioner Kerpes and Commissioner Martz and Commissioner Topchian are there. We have, and then we have one commissioner with lower than that, and one commissioner with keeping the 28. So with that, commissioners, just to come to a resolution, what number do we want to propose?
I would propose cutting it in half and going 14. And like I said, especially with the paint, this is an art, not a science. But if we're trying to come up with an explanation of how this could be used in the future, is that they've done some of the job. And, I think saying you've done some of the job, you've painted, you've done it poorly. That is, you've made an attempt. You've gotten halfway there. Full way there is actually doing it to comply with our laws. And so, it would almost be akin to if they painted half of them perfectly and half of them not. Obviously, that would be a different calculation. Some would get the full, some would get 0, but it comes out the same way, is that they've made the attempt, they're just not there yet.
The number is 29, though, not 28.
Right. Is it?
The reduction was 28, even though this says 29.
Right. The reduction from the hearing examiner was 28, so.
I think 14 is a little, is it high or low? A little too high to continue keeping when comparing it to other things. Like, for example, a door being missing would be $14 on the low end. A no on-site manager would be 14 on the low end. These aren't exact comparables, but it's like when you rent an apartment, what things are more valuable to you? If you scraped on your door, or having a door that's very shabby? I don't know what a $14 door versus a $73 door is, but let's say you were low end of the door. Or to me, it doesn't matter, there's an on-site manager, so $14 doesn't really convince me. I'd rather have a nice looking door than an on-site manager. So I think $14 is just a little too high to continue, unless we want to send it back, but I can be convinced.
Would you propose another number? Because given the way we're talking about things,
10.
Okay, so you would give them the 10, reduce the 28 to a 10.
Yes.
Right now, they're
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, we would give, they would maintain a $10 rent reduction.
Great, okay.
But Commissioner Kerpes, you were in favor of keeping the $28 rent reduction initially.
Originally, I said I am hesitant about keeping the $28.
Okay. So
Yeah, I was
misunderstood
hesitant
you
about
probably.
it.
But
But I didn't want to restore it completely.
Yeah, I personally liked Commissioner Martz's justification and explanation how we can, why we did it 50-50. It seems it's reasonable, and I'm in favor of that. What you said, if it's, it's a halfway performed job. It's not 100%, so that's why we are debating now. If it was a 100% performed work, so we wouldn't be spending all this time. And it's clearly, when you see when you read the inspector's report, there are so many photographic pictures that he mentioned. Yeah, it's painted, but there are defects, and listing the defects. So I don't see it's less than 50. I think it's at least justifiable. That's how we can explain why we use that $14 versus any other.
I'm going to make just an alternate session. It seems to be a difference of opinion among the commissioners as to what we might reduce that number to, not a consensus. Wonder if we wouldn't be better, I know Commissioner Marcy, we have enough evidence, but more comfortable remanding this back to the hearing examiner, saying that we feel that most of the work has been done, but not completely. We'd like you to relook at these numbers and adjust the rent reduction. So I would be, because I don't hear a great consensus over that dollar amount among us, perhaps remanding that back to the hearing examiner, letting her decide what that number should be.
I think the votes are there. I mean, I initially proposed 7, but I'm happy with the range, given the arguments that we've heard. I think Commissioner Maggio made nice comments about having a professional paint job needing sanding and the professionalism that goes into it. So that has forced my number up from my initial 7. And I would be in favor of a range between, I mean, you have my vote between 10 and 15, 10 and 14 at this point. I mean, obviously I was a little bit lower at 7, but I have been persuaded by the arguments, and I'm not in favor of remanding. I think we have an opportunity to come to a resolution right now. I think that this was already before the hearing examiner, and they made a decision, and now it's before us, and we have an opportunity to make our decision, and we have evidence that was in front of us, and I think we can put this to bed.
It seems like there are two possible motions here. One is to recommend that $14, to keep the $14 rent reduction. The other one is to continue $28 rent reduction. So it seems like if we are not remanding or reversing, so that's...
I would just reiterate that these photographs present a powerful argument, and if you really look at them carefully, it's just not even close to being a good job. I'm still going to stick to the $28.
And I am persuaded by that argument, Commissioner Maggio, and that's why I've wanted to come up a bit in my reduction, and maybe other commissioners may want to come up a bit too, because I do think it was a sloppy job, and I think it was so sloppy that the hearing examiner wanted to keep it at 28.
That's a good argument.
Yeah. So I think if we, were to split the difference here and say 14, that has my vote. Just because I do see some discrepancies in the record that it wasn't all, but it's a substantial amount.
Why don't we go to $20?
Well, why don't we start with the
Motion for
with the
14.
motion for $28 to see if it's going to be supported, because initially that's going to be supporting what examiner determined. The examiner reviewed the case and the inspector's report, and the examiner determined there is no substantial compliance. There is no compliance, so and the examiner kept the $28 rent reduction. So let's have a motion first to see if that will pass, supporting the examiner's decision, and then which is going to be against the staff's recommendation. And then if it doesn't pass, so then maybe we can entertain a motion for Commissioner Mart's motion, maybe for a $14 rent decrease.
All right, I make a motion for a $20 dollar amount.
Did you say 2.8 or 2.0?
2.8 or two. We're talking about keeping the decision of the examiner to keep the $28 rent reduction.
Well,
So
it seems
the-
Commissioner Maggio's moved off that position
Oh, okay.
now. He's
Oh, I see.
happy for $20 at this
All right.
point. So there is a motion on the table. Is there a second to a $20 rent reduction?
I'll second it.
Secretary Brino, may we have the vote?
Commissioner Kirpies?
No.
Commissioner Maggio?
Yes.
Commissioner Martz?
No.
Commissioner Topchian?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergstein?
No?
Chair Charity?
No. So that was for our 20. So Commissioner Martz, I'll make your motion. I'd like to make a motion for a rent reduction of 14.
I will second that.
Any further comment before? Okay, Secretary Brino?
Commissioner Kirpies?
No.
Commissioner Maggio?
No.
Commissioner Martz?
Yes.
Commissioner Topchian?
Sounds awkward. Yes.
Vice Chair Bergstein?
No?
Chair Charity?
Yes. So we have a tie. So we're going to have to try another number, gentlemen.
I move that we reduce that we restore, I move that we keep the rent reduced by $10,
And I'll second that.
if that's said right.
Yeah, to $10 rent reduction.
Y-
Yes.
Yes, not in addition to the 28.
And I'll second it.
Could you repeat that? What was your dollar amount again?
A $10 rent reduction would still be maintained, I think.
stay in place. Secretary Barino.
Commissioner Kerpes.
Yes.
Maggio.
Yes.
Commissioner Martz.
Yes.
Commissioner Topchian.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergstein.
Aye.
Chair Charity.
Yes. All right, that was our number. Thank you very much, commissioners. That was good. Moving on from our appeal, item 9 to item 10, public comment. No public comment. Moving on from item 10 to item 11, commission comments.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that I did attend the Rainbow Awards here in this auditorium last night, and it was very, very exciting and very well attended, and I'm glad I was there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further commission comments?
Just a quick one. We received the LA County's bulletin about extending the temporary rent control for Los Angeles County. I wonder if Manager Noonan has any information, anything you want to share with us during your comments. It was very good kind of news and explanation in the bulletin that describes the protections, which is pretty much just protections that we have at place here in West Hollywood, in Los Angeles, and other rent control jurisdictions. You know, setting the limit at 3% for rent increases, providing protections from evictions, and that across the board in LA County. It was temporary passed, I believe, last year, and it's extended through December of this year. So maybe staff would like to make some interesting kind of give some background of that during your comments. But I think it was really fascinating.
Thank you. Commissioners, anything further?
I believe last meeting we had a discussion about moving the study session, and so I just want to reevaluate that. Commissioner Kerpes, we left it open since you were out, so you are back now, and to be honest, I believe it was the August 22nd date was the proposed change to move it.
Was that because you were not able to attend?
Correct.
And Commissioner Kerpes was not able to attend?
No, it was just I wasn't here when you guys discussed it. Karen did run a date by me. I'm just checking to see which one it was. She didn't actually run a date by me, I guess. But I'm fine with that, moving it.
To August 22nd? Is
To
it,
any day, yeah.
Okay.
I understand that July 25th was the issue of concern, and so I'm open to moving it to some other
Shouldn't we
day.
ask staff if that would be a burden for them?
yeah.
We had this discussion last week, and they left that date open and didn't file appeals. So unless they filed appeals that date, I believe they were holding it open until we could have this discussion tonight. Is that correct, staff? Thank you.
I'm open to both dates.
I'm fine with moving it so you can attend.
Thank you.
Are we moving the, are we only moving the study session, or are we attempting to cancel that meeting?
That was up for discussion. A number of people were fine canceling it since there would be nothing there. Commissioner Bergstein was opposed to that, but I believe others were not. So
I have no issue with moving the study session to August 22nd, but I would not be in favor of canceling the July 25th meeting. I think we still have enough action items from our study session from last year that have not yet been covered. I would ask staff to choose one or two and prepare for that July 25th meeting for the presentation.
We would just want to make sure that there's going to be a quorum that night.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we want to continue on if only half of the folks are here? I mean, or are we doing it more for the public?
I'm happy to show up if there's some things to discuss.
I know that the public doesn't show up that often, but I like them to have the opportunity to show whatever comments they'd like to make, and I don't think it's an undue burden to keep that meeing on schedule.
Could you propose some items to staff for us if you have some, Commissioner
Give me a minute.
Well, not now. But we have time. It's on July 25th. But you know what I'm saying.
Now, I'm just looking at our priorities from the last study session. We have not yet talked about tenant harassment. We haven't really covered further discussion on any repeal of Costa-Hawkins.
Would we want to do anything more on smoking, even though the
I don't know
council?
whether that'd be appropriate until after we've heard how council decides on Monday. We've already had the discussion at this level, so I would wait to see how council decides that particular issue. We've talked about what council regards the commission's legislative role, and that seems to be coming up frequently in discussion at this level. So just look at the list. There's quite a number that have not yet been covered. I would actually defer to staff, since they'll be the one that have to prepare their report, to perhaps choose either one really meaty subject that would take up the body of one meeting, or if you think there are two that might be covered in one evening, I would leave that to staff's discretion.
I would like to just say that this commission has worked very hard, 2 meetings a month, which is kind of averaged 4 appeals a month. So I think we could cancel 1 meeting.
If there are 3 others that don't plan to be present that evening, I wouldn't be present either. The only reason is not that I'm opposed to having a meeting, Commissioner Bergstein. I just the issues you're talking about, I would like our entire commission to be here if possible. The ones you just mentioned. So that's the only thing is I don't know.
And
I'm open to whatever you guys want to do.
and I'm planning a trip. I'm not sure whether I'm coming back on the 23rd or 24th. It could be even 25th. So I'm probably going to be most likely out of country. So that's why if there'd be any
May
discussion
not have a
on one
quorum
of these
then.
topics, I really wanted to.
If we don't
be
have a quorum,
present.
then it's a moot point.
The only reason that we can cancel a meeting is
Yeah.
through quorum.
And I would add, I'm not going to be there, so it's not as much my decision, but Commissioner O'Keefe had said that she would like to go on a vacation and not have it as an absence, so.
We definitely want to have the study session scheduled at a time when the entire commission will be present.
But no, I don't, there's no question about that. We are moving the study session off of that date.
Right, so-
Yeah. It's just a matter of are we also going to not have quorum on the July 25th? And it sounds like 3 of you for sure won't be here, and well, 2 for sure, 1 most likely. So I'm fine for planning purposes to say I will not be here as well, so that
So
it
that's
resolves
canceled.
the issue.
Yeah, that's resolved.
So there won't be
resolved.
quorum on the 25th, it sounds like.
Okay.
And once you're all gone, I'll say, I can make it. Just kidding.
Then can I ask, 'cause I would like to cover some more of the topics that we identified last year. The July 11th meeting, I'm not sure why we're getting a presentation on the light rail extension, but not opposed to it. But perhaps we could add one item from last year's study session on the 11th. 22nd would not be, and then perhaps looking into September, October, if we could add some coming out of the current study session back into the agenda.
So we'll go ahead and have a look at that. I do want to point out on July 11th, you do have 2 appeals that
Oh.
evening already. So that
Sorry, I
always
missed that
makes it a
column. You're
little
correct.
tough.
I rescind that.
Yeah, we do need to do the RSO code amendment, so we will move that from the 22nd to August 8th. So that will be an item. We do not have any other, we do actually have 2 appeals that night as well. So I think opportunities for other items will most likely be after the study session on the 22nd.
And I'm fine adding additional things, into the fall, and I think maybe the study session will kind of flesh out what things we care more about and what we don't, and then we can add as we see fit.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. I believe, are there any further commissioner comments? I just want to say that I do have some absences coming up. I do apologize. My brother's birthday is coming up, so I'm going to miss that June meeting, and my firm is pulling me out for July 11th. So this may be my last opportunity to say it's been a pleasure serving as chair, just because I may not see you for a bit. If this case cancels, then I'll say it again on July 11th, but it settles. But it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for supporting me, and that's all I got to say.
Well, I guess then that calls for fanfare tonight.
Yeah, it doesn't have to.
We didn't bring the cake.
Well, we won't have a cake, I mean, obviously, but.
We can go get Russian dinner together.
I would
Commissioner Topshins.
I would just like then to add to that, and I just have appreciated your chairing immensely. I've been here for close to 30 years, or 25 years in this commission, and I think you have been definitely one of the best and most effective chairs that we have ever had. And I thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Okay, moving on from commission comments to staff comments.
We don't have any, so Commissioner Topshin asked us about the county process and the county laws. We don't have any information on that at this point, but it's wonderful to see it happening. I don't have any other information. I'm glad and appreciate that Commissioner Bergstein did mention the item, the smoke-free item that's going to the council. Of course, again, that was one of the items that this commission looked at and brought forward as a recommendation. And you all are welcome to attend that meeting. That's all of my comments.
Thanks very much.
Ellison has a comment.
I think I mentioned that our longtime hearing examiner, Judy Sherman, is retiring at the end of this month. Oh, she is. And we have hired a new hearing examiner who I'm excited to introduce to you. He will begin in August. In the meantime, the City Council is going to recognize Ms. Sherman, and I believe that City Council meeting is in July, but I will double check that date, and I will let all of you know in case you want to come out and pay your, I want to say respects, but she's not dead. But she will be there, and she'll be recognized by the council. One other thing is, in addition to LA County, the city of Inglewood has also passed some rent caps. They're modest. They're a little high for my taste. I think they're about 8%. But that is a trend that we're seeing in the Los Angeles region in response to the affordable housing crisis. So that's good.
Do you think Ms. Sherman would like to come here our last meeting so that we might be able to thank her here or recognize her here?
She lives so far away. I think her coming, I think if you all could come to the council meeting where she'll be, that would probably be preferable.
Thank you.
I was just going to say commission comments or questions for staff, and I know Commissioner Kirby's.
Yeah, I just kind of, in addition, so it's good news actually what you said about the county. They're extending it, not just temporarily extending it, but they're extending it temporarily so that they can get their formal everlasting ordinance in place. I just get, and the reason I know that is because I was at the COG meeting today, and the county gave an update on that.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Kirby's. Any further questions or comments for staff? Very good. Then this adjourns our meeting. The next regular meeting of the Rent Stabilization Commission will be held June 27th, 2017 at 7 p.m. in the West Hollywood Park Public Meeting Room in the council chambers. This meeting is adjourned.